So I am going to teach you how to make these. What we're essentially going to make are these Jello cubes. I know this isn't a cube, but it's what I had left from my test batch. So we're making these Jello cubes. These are actually going to be an analogy for cells. So each cube is going to be one cell, and we're going to look at cells of different sizes and how well they diffuse nutrients into them. But what I'm teaching you now is how to actually make the cubes. So what you need is you need a quarter of a red cabbage. If you are not sharing with anybody, then go ahead and make yourself some coleslaw or something with your remaining cabbage. And then on the stove, I have some water that's boiling. So cabbage, red cabbage, is actually an acid-base indicator. So it turns different colors. The extract, the purple extract, turns different colors when exposed to an acid or a base. So it turns greenish when it's exposed to a base, and it turns pinkish when it's exposed to an acid. So I'm cutting up the cabbage, and then I'm kind of pulling it apart a little so that there's a greater surface area. And then when the water boils, I'm just going to pour the water on top. So what we're going to do, Jello itself is an acidic substance. Gelatin is acidic. So we're going to see that even though I have lemon Jello here, which should be yellow, when I pour the cabbage water in, it's going to turn kind of a pinkish color, which is how we get this. So this is the lemon Jello, but as I said, it's acidic. And then the nutrients we'll use is going to be a basic substance in the end. Now, if you are vegetarian or vegan and you've chosen to do this with agar instead of gelatin, please look at the directions online because your directions are slightly different than the gelatin ones. We're going to be making the agar a basic solution. So you're still going to do your cabbage and all of that, but we're going to make the agar basic, and then we're going to expose it to an acidic solution when we do the lab. So just make sure you check online and email me if you are going the vegetarian or vegan route. So now my water is about to boil, and so I'm going to turn it off, and then I am just going to pour the boiling water over the red cabbage. And almost immediately, you're going to start to see that that water starts to turn a purplish blue color. I'm going to set that aside now and leave it for about 20 minutes to half an hour. Okay, so it's been about 25 minutes to half hour. It's not really rocket science, whatever. So I'm going to strain the cabbage water out and into a pan. And you know you did it well when your cabbage kind of looks a little washed out. And then the water in the pan is nice and purple. And I'm just going to put that back on the stove for a little bit. Because with Jello or with agar, you want it to dissolve, and things dissolve better in hot water. So solubility, we call that solubility. Solubility increases. Solubility of solids increases as the liquids get hotter. So I'm just going to heat that up a little more. In the meantime, I'm going to take my packet of Jello. It should be a 3-ounce packet, so one of the small ones. You want to make sure it's lemon. Or if you were able to get unflavored Jello, that's awesome. I think for some reason with COVID, they aren't making as much unflavored Jello, and I'm going to pour it into a container. And so I want to make this container large enough that in the end I'm going to be cutting this into blocks. So I want something that has a pretty large base so I can get many blocks, but also it might, like I'm hoping it kind of goes up to here perhaps, and then I can get a couple layers of blocks too. In the end, for 3 trials, I'm going to have 3 different size blocks. I want 3 trials, so I need 9 blocks total. So I've heated my cabbage water back up. I have more than enough. I only need, for 1 packet of Jello, I'm going to use 1 cup of cabbage water. With your remaining cabbage water, whoops, okay, so I didn't measure that too well. With your remaining cabbage water, you can actually have a lot of fun just around the house. Wait until it cools, but you can put different substances in it and see how it changes color based on different substances. The neat thing about cabbage water that I like is that you could like put some lemon juice in and it'll turn pink. And then as you add baking soda, it'll get more and more purple again and then go green if you keep adding baking soda. So you can kind of play around with neutralization reactions that way. Now I'm just going to stir this until the Jell-O all dissolves. You can see it's this nice kind of yellowy pinkish color. That's because, as I said, gelatin is acidic. I'm going to dissolve the gelatin, then I'm going to put it in the refrigerator until it solidifies, usually overnight. First, we're going to make our baking soda water. So I'm going to take about 3 tablespoons of baking soda. It's not like really a hugely measurable thing. The first time I did it, I used some, but I didn't know how much that was. So we're going to put in some baking soda and then we're going to fill up this nice jar with water. And then we're just going to kind of take a knife or a chopstick or something and stir it until the baking soda dissolves. So then the other thing, so I'll just kind of let that sit for a few minutes. So that's going to make our baking soda water. Baking soda is a basic substance, so it will react with the gelatin because gelatin's acidic and it will neutralize, but then it's also going to change the color of the cabbage juice. Remember, cabbage juice is a pH indicator. So I've also cut all of my squares here. So I've got 3 of each, or all of my cubes. I've got 3 of each cube. 3 that are 1 centimeter per side, 3 that are 1.5 centimeter per side, and 3 that are 2.5 centimeters per side. I wanted some that were 3 centimeters per side, but one of the things I learned, I was going to do 3, 2, and 1. One of the things I learned is, because as you can see I've got a ton of leftover Jell-O, that you should cut your largest cubes first and then cut your smaller ones so you can kind of learn from my mistake, and if you want to do like 3, 2, and 1 per side. I used 2 rulers just to kind of double check and make like a right angle. I would highly encourage you to cut as carefully as possible. Because when we start writing this up as a lab and you're talking about your experimental error, one of the things about experimental error is you never want to say something like, oh, well, I didn't cut my cubes well enough, so next time I should cut them better because it screwed up the data. Like, we'll talk a little bit more about good experimental error, but hey, I totally screwed up and I knew I screwed up and oh well, I was just a little sloppy. Not good experimental error. So now all of my baking soda has dissolved. So I'm ready to put the cubes in. I'm going to put all the cubes in this nice large bowl. If you don't have a bowl this large, that's totally fine. You can put them in 3 separate bowls, right? Each cube can go into, like each set of cubes can go into different bowls. So there are all my cubes. I'm going to gently pour the baking soda solution in. My cubes should float a little. And now you can start to see there's actually some bubbles forming. That's part of the neutralization reaction. But now I'm just going to leave it for about 20 minutes. And I'll set a timer and then we'll come back in 20 minutes.